Polestar 3 isn't like other cars, except other Polestars. It's a futuristic, minimalist, all-electric SUV that challenges not only your muscle memory in a car, but what you understand a car to be. It's what happens when luxury meets simplicity meets Earth consciousness. Even if the final product is a little sanctimonious, the Polestar 3 is unlike anything most people drive or have ever driven. And it's really, really good.
This is the 2025 Polestar 3, a new electric SUV with roots in a century-old brand. And I'm Alanis King. Let's go for a drive and stick around for the end of this video to get this Polestar's full report card.
Maybe you've heard of Polestar. Maybe you haven't. Back in 1996, Polestar began as a Volvo collaboration in the Swedish Touring Car Championship. It's common for racing heritage to make its way into street cars, whether by way of performance, styling, or both. And that was the case with Polestar too. Volvo made concept and production Polestar models in the 2010s before pivoting the brand completely. In 2017, Volvo announced that Polestar would become a standalone electric brand. This move made a lot of sense at the time, and still does to an extent. The 2000s and 2010s were an era of new, unproven, popular, and sometimes promising EV startups, like Rivian, Lucid, Lordstown Motors, Fisker, Faraday Future, and more. Some panned out, some didn't. By creating the Polestar EV brand, Volvo made its own new, mysterious, and popular name. With the backing of a proven manufacturer, Polestar launched with a car that wasn't fully electric, the 600 horsepower Polestar 1, which had a 2-liter super and turbocharged engine with 3 electric motors. The Polestar 1 also had around 70 miles of electric-only range, which was, and still is, a big number for hybrids. Polestar, which is currently funded by Chinese automaker Geely, had a new logo, a new design language, and new, affluently styled cars that looked familiar, like Volvos, but more peculiar, in a good way.
Polestar currently offers 3 new models on the American market. The Polestar 2, which is a sedan, the Polestar 3, which is this SUV, and the Polestar 4, which is a mix between the two. And you might be thinking, Alanis, I have never heard of the Polestar 3, and I have certainly never seen one. That's because this is a relatively new model. Polestar delivered the first ones less than a year ago. And also, Polestar's sales are still relatively low compared to other manufacturers. Globally, in 2024, Polestar sold 45,000 models, which was a 15% drop from the year before. And for context, Toyota USA, just USA, sold 45,000 RAV4s in December 2024 alone.
The 2025 Polestar 3 comes in 3 main versions. A long-range single motor, which starts at $67,500 American dollars, a long-range dual motor, which starts at $73,400, and a long-range dual motor with a performance package, which starts at $79,400. The cheaper single motor is rear-wheel drive and has 299 horsepower, and it goes from 0 to 60 miles per hour in 7.5 seconds. It's not super fast by modern standards, but it can get there. The dual motor is all-wheel drive with 489 horsepower and a 4.8-second 0 to 60, while the dual motor performance pack is all-wheel drive with 517 horsepower and a 4.5-second 0 to 60. That is fast for a car with a 6,000-pound curb weight.
This is a 2025 Polestar 3 Launch Edition, and it's a dual motor without the performance pack. That means it has 489 horsepower, 620 pound-feet of torque, all-wheel drive, a 315-mile range, and a specialty starting price of $79,000. After fees, and a $2,300 add-on for these 22-inch sport wheels, which I like, the total price comes to $82,600. And I'm not gonna lie, when I first sat in this car, I said, this is gonna be $80,000. And it was, so it kind of fits. When my loaner Polestar 3 first arrived, I had 4 immediate thoughts. My first one was, oh no, that is a really tame paint color. When you review cars on the internet, you typically want your loaner cars to be brighter or at least really intriguing colors because that gets people's attention from the get-go when they see the photo. So when you get something like white or black or silver, you're a little worried people's eyes won't be drawn to it. But then I remembered Polestar's only paint colors are tame. Really, you can only get these cars in white or gray or black or dark blue or champagne. There's nothing bright and wild, which is kind of funny considering that Polestar's roots in the racing team, those cars were bright blue. But there's none of that here. My second immediate thought about the Polestar 3 is that there are a lot of exterior body pieces that I can't immediately assign a purpose to, like this little air passageway in the front. My fingers are touching right here. The second set of weird body panels comes at the back, right here. And maybe this is used to deflect air. Maybe it has a purpose, but it does look a little funny. The third air passageway comes on the back of the car in the spoiler area. See? I can stick my hand right through here. And these things add visual appeal to the car. Tons of automakers use them. But when you start looking at them, you wonder, what is the purpose of this? Is it downforce? Is it drag? What's going on here? Is there a purpose? I don't know. My third immediate thought when the Polestar 3 arrived was, this key fob is just a little box. There is not a single button on it. So if you want to lock the car or unlock the car, you either have to use the Polestar app or go like that. I can't even get it to unlock because the key fob is almost dead, and this is a brand new car. I have a key fob from 2011. I don't think I've ever replaced the battery on it, and it's not dead. But we may be locked out of this car right now. Oh, there it went. You also don't have buttons to unlock the front or the trunk on this key fob. And if I am looking at a key fob, I want it to have more features, not less. I don't care about minimalism on a key fob. I want to be able to control my car without getting my phone out and having to press it on there. The fourth thing I immediately noticed about this car is that, like any other Polestar, it is not a carbon copy of everything else that's on the road. It's got this minimalist interior, that mysterious Polestar logo, and most of all, funniest of all, it looks like someone just took a label maker to the entire vehicle. This side label just has the name of the car and a couple of specs. Every seat inside the Polestar 3 also has a label that says Polestar 3, 100% traced Napa leather, a CO2 stat, and animal welfare secured. All of this lets your passengers know you are a good person, and more importantly, you're a better person than they are. Up front, we have the funniest label of them all, which is Smart Zone Sensor Cluster. I don't really know what the purpose of that one is, but it is funny. All of these are just surface level observations, and we're gonna go so much deeper when I drive the car in a second. And we're also going to talk about how I think a lot of the technologies you see in this car could be the future of automotive. Polestar's branding is all about sustainability, as you saw on the seats. And sustainability is a huge pillar of modern automotive technology. Our partner, automotive supplier Magna, also works in seating sustainability.
Magna's sustainable seating products use the circular economy as their guide, and Magna designs its EcoSphere foam and trim assemblies to be fully recyclable at the end of life. The first step in creating 100% melt recyclable trim cover and foam assemblies is sourcing raw, certified PET recycled materials. Next is melting down the raw PET to form resin beads, polyester fiber, and thread. Third is using those new materials to create the fabric, trim foundation and base pad that make up Magna's recyclable seat foam and trim. Next, they assemble their durable and comfortable seats and install them in cars to live out their vehicle life. The sixth and final step brings us back to the beginning. When a vehicle reaches the end of its life, the foam and trim assembly are easily removed as one part. The materials get ground up and made into new materials for the next seats, starting their life over again.
Magna looks at the end of a vehicle's life as an opportunity to create new recycled seating and believes that waste is not an end, but a new beginning. If you want to learn more about Magna's technologies, you can visit magna.com or check out their YouTube channel, which I will link in the comments of this video. We have now made it to my favorite part of any car review, which is how many Lannises can fit in this Polestar 3's trunk. Now, before I get in it, I just want to say, if I were not the picture of flexibility and athleticism, I could bring the back of this car down using its air suspension and a little button on the side. So if you have something heavy to load or you just don't want to pick it up that high, you can squat the back of this car. And the funniest part of that is it's a very useful feature. But when the back of a car is lowered like this, it is called a Carolina squat. And do you know where this car is made? South Carolina. That's amazing. Alrighty, let's see how many Atlantises fit in here. I have a feeling this is going to be a low roof line. Due to the low roof line, I'm going to say 1.5 because I have to bend down in here. It's time to drive the 2025 Polestar 3. But before we do driving impressions, I do think it's important to talk about the interior and what this car is like to live in and live with. And the thing I love about Polestars is that their interiors are modern and minimalist and clean, but they're not boring. They do it really, really well, where you get in this car and what you see is refreshing. You're looking at the seats and the designs and you go, wow, that's so nice. But it's also not overbearing. They're not just doing a ton with it to try to get your attention. They keep it simple, but they also keep it very interesting. Something I also love about all EVs is that when you have an electric vehicle, you do not have a big lump of a transmission tunnel in between each side of the seats. And so you get a bunch of floor space that opens up. And in the Polestar, that means you have a ton of space in the back. Not only do you have a ton of legroom, but you also have just a ton of space to kick your feet around or put anything back there. And in the front, you get this dedicated storage compartment that goes under the center console area and under the cup holder area. And in addition to that, right near the phone plugs, you get this pocket that pulls out that you could put anything in, but you could also put your phone there if you're charging it and you want to use the cup holders. The material changes on this car go from these soft leathers to a wood trim to a kind of stiff cloth that looks really, really nice. It just gives you that recycled but upscale vibe. I know that's a weird way to describe it, but the entire idea of a Polestar is that it's like fancy recycling. Like they took plastic bottles that someone who was not as cool as you tossed out and they made it into a car and then you're cool for driving it. That's the whole idea. And you really do get that feeling when you're in this car. And you really get that feeling from just all of these porous, nice materials. It's really cool, even if it doesn't sound cool. There are only 3 materials on this car that don't feel up to par with the rest of it. And the first is the seatbelt buckles. The seatbelt buckles have this odd, dull, plasticky feel. And yes, a seatbelt buckle is plasticky, but it just looks way cheaper than the rest of the car. And I feel like they could have put better seatbelts in here. I've seen better seatbelts in my life and they could have been in here. The second is these visors. They are extremely thin and just not very good feeling. They don't feel sturdy or solid, so I don't love the visors. And the third is something that gets every automaker on the market, and that is piano black. There is piano black everywhere in this car. The controls in the Polestar 3 are fascinating, and they're a place where I think a lot of automakers will take note of what's in here and maybe apply that to their future cars. It goes from everything from the door handles to the screen controls to the minimalist buttons in this car. Everything is different, and sometimes that's in a good way and sometimes that's in a not so good way. It just really depends. It starts with the door handles. Instead of having a normal handle that you pull in and out, you have this little latch that you just pull up on, and that opens the door. And you get used to it very, very quickly, and it also looks nice and feels nice, and it looks different. And different is very, very important for an automaker like Polestar. A lot of the controls I really love in the Polestar 3 are actually in the infotainment screen, which we're going to talk about soon. But first, I want to talk about a couple of controls I don't love so much. And mainly, it's the multi-function controls in this car. Because the interior is so minimalist, there are almost 0 buttons in it. The only real buttons you have are on the steering wheel, and you have basically 4 options on either side. I still haven't figured out what the left side does, but the right side controls pretty much everything. So when you want to make adjustments, like a steering wheel adjustment, you go into the infotainment screen and you hit adjustments, and then you hit steering wheel, and then you are able to enact these controls right here to press up, down, in, and out for the telescoping of the wheel. But as soon as you're out of that menu, the buttons, they change because they are programmed by the screen. They change their assignment, basically. They change what they do with what you select in the infotainment screen. So those buttons aren't static. They don't stay the same. And that can be really difficult for muscle memory and also just general frustration with a vehicle, because I think you would get used to it pretty quickly, having to go into the screen to select what these buttons are going to do. But when you're not in the car for very long, you're trying to telescope the wheel and change the height of it, and you go, oh no, what am I doing? Oh, that's the voice recognition button. Whoops. Because you don't exactly know what you're doing yet. It also just presents difficulty. Anytime you add extra steps into what you're supposed to do, like pressing an infotainment screen, there are ways that that can fall apart. I have had cars for review where the infotainment screen goes out. Not a Polestar. It was a pre-production model where I had something go out and it was a different automaker. But still, if your screen goes out, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Probably nothing. And I think a multi-function control like that can be good, but it can also just be minimalist for the sake of being minimalist, not for the sake of benefiting the driver. Another issue with these multi-function controls, specifically in the car I'm driving, is there's a little bit of a delay. So when you go to press them, sometimes the steering wheel doesn't start moving up and down or telescoping right away. It takes a second for it to catch on, and you're like, hey, are you there? What's happening? So maybe that's an issue in other Polestars. Maybe it's just an issue in this specific model I have, but that delay does make it difficult to do the changes you need to do quickly. Now we get to talk about the thing I love most about Polestars, or close to most about Polestars, which is the infotainment screen. And I know what you're thinking, Alanis, that is a massive iPad tacked onto a dashboard. Please control yourself. And I agree, it's a massive iPad tacked onto the dashboard, and you can have your own thoughts about that. But the operating system behind that iPad is awesome. It is a Google and Android based system, and everyone loves this about Polestars because the system is so pretty. It's so nice to work. It's so customizable. It's basically this gray and orange screen and gray and orange interface that you can use to just customize anything about the vehicle at any point. And it's awesome. It's so easy to work. It's so intuitive. There are tons of options, of course, because it's a minimalist car with almost no buttons, but they're so easy to learn and they're so easy to work that it's just really fun to use and really relaxing to use. You don't have to be stressed in all of these menus, digging through everything. It's all right there, and it's all super helpful. You can customize anything in this infotainment screen. It really does feel like infinite options and infinite ways to change everything about this car. You can change the behaviors of the car as you walk up to it with the key fob. So do you want it to unlock when you press the door handle or get near the door handle? Or do you want it to unlock as a proximity thing? So as you're walking up to the car, all the door handles pop out. That's up to you. You can also customize the exterior lighting behaviors in the infotainment screen. You can turn on your massaging seats. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want, and everything's super easy to find, even if you've never driven or used this car before. There are also a ton of really informative stats in the infotainment screen, like the car health menu. If you select car health in this car, it will tell you where your tires are at, where your car is at, where your key fob battery is at, which is really important for us because the key fob we have is dead. So it keeps telling me to charge the key fob, but also for some reason it won't charge on the wireless charger despite the car telling me to use that. So haven't figured it out yet, but at least I know. The last interior feature I want to discuss about this car before we move to driving impressions is the seats. I really like the seat designs in this car. It just has these subtle little patterns that aren't in your face, but they do look really pretty. Aside from the holier than thou writing about the materials that go into the seats, it's a really nice design. And you also have some Easter eggs in there, which I think are really cool. So on the seat belts, when you pull the seat belt in front of you to put it in the buckle, it says, it's engraved in the metal, since 1959. And that is a very important date because 1959 is the day that Volvo put into production and implementation in cars the 3-point seatbelt. Now before this, people had seatbelts, right? But they didn't have these major innovation that is still in a lot of modern cars today was 1959 in a Volvo. And Volvo made this patent free to everybody. It was an open patent so other automakers could use it, and it was widely adopted over time so that we all have nice, safe 3-point seatbelts. And those 3-point seatbelts are one of the reasons Volvo has a massive reputation for safety. So it's really cool to see that referenced in the seatbelts in this car. It's just thoughtful. Like the rest of the Polestar lineup is, it's thoughtful, it has Easter eggs, and it's cool to see. Now we're going to do some driving impressions in the Polestar 3, but these aren't going to be nearly as lengthy or in-depth as the interior impressions because I find that in a car like this, that is the more important part. This is a normal commuting EV. It's meant to go to school and work. And I find that when you're in a normal EV like that, not a performance-oriented one like a Hyundai Ioniq 5N or something, but a normal EV, there's not a huge variation in the driving experience. Your big variations are in how much power does it have, what's the wind noise and road noise like, and what do your pedals feel like. Aside from that, the feel of the acceleration is very similar. It's elasticy. You have one pedal driving. It's either good, medium, or bad, and that's what we're gonna talk about today. This car is fast. When you put the pedal down, that power goes down very smoothly and very quickly because this is all-wheel drive with a 4.8 second 0 to 60 time. It's pretty good, but it's also nothing rowdy. It feels very smooth and well applied, and you just feel sorted, like you can merge really well on the highway. The steering has some weight to it and the pedals have some weight to it. When you put your foot on the accelerator pedal, it has that elasticy feel that you get in an electric vehicle, and the steering isn't just so airy and light that you feel like you're not driving a car, which I like. I like when you can feel something underneath your hands. The one pedal driving is also great. It's powerful without being jerky. It just really smoothly slows down to a stop. But something that I didn't realize was I had to turn off creep in order to slow to a stop. So I was doing one pedal driving the other day, and for some reason the car wouldn't come to a stop. And gas cars have what's called creep if they're automatics. So you put a gas car in drive or reverse and it begins to creep creep in that direction. And so in order to make EVs feel more like gas cars, they usually have what's called a creep function. You can turn it off to where the EV does not creep. But creep was on, and I'm sitting here going, why isn't one pedal driving stopping? Oh, it's because creep is on, so it's creeping. Once I turned that off, the one pedal experience was incredible. It is not jerky, it's strong enough, it brings you to a stop without being uncomfortable to drive, and man, I just love one pedal driving. Now that we've driven the 2025 Polestar 3 Launch Edition, it's time to give it a grade. Welcome to Alanis's report card. The exterior on this car gets a B-. It's eye-catching, but I think it's eye-catching in a weird way because it just looks a little odd, so it's all right, middle of the road. The interior gets an A-. I would give it an A if it didn't have all of those multifunction buttons that kind of mess with your muscle memory and also aren't the most responsive. It's beautiful in there and all of the materials are great. I just wish those buttons worked a little better. The performance gets a B+. I enjoy this car. It's fast and it's comfortable, but in terms of power and range, it's just okay, especially for the price. The value gets a B. This is an $80,000 car. It's a lot of money, and I understand that. But when I sat in it for the first time, I said, this is an $80,000 car. And it was, so that counts for something. Would I take this car on a road trip? Yes, I would. It would be super comfortable, and one of my favorite features is that in the Google Maps on the screen, it will tell you your charge when you arrive at your destination. And overall, it gets a B. There are a lot of quirks about this car, and I really like it, but a few of those quirks could be fixed.
The Polestar 3 is a rolling showcase of futuristic automotive technology. It doesn't look or feel like other cars on the road, because unlike many of those cars, it's not a cut and paste job. It's an electric SUV built to be special in every way, and it is.
The 2025 Polestar 3 is not the most affordable electric vehicle on the market, but it is one of the most unique. And in a world where EVs are constantly criticized for lacking personality, that's one of the best things it can be.